Hello, everybody. All right, we're going to talk banking this morning, and it has to do with an interview that Jerome Powell did 2 Sundays ago on 60 Minutes. It was a pretty interesting interview. It was kind of a cover your tail interview where he's saying, look, some bad things are coming. Don't blame me. Congress is way overspending, which is true. We don't control any of that. He's right. The interest on the debt is out of control. He's right. But then he said something pretty interesting. We can't save every bank. Well, wait, what do you see that's going on with banking? Here's what I think is going on. I've got to take you back a year. Do you remember when Silicon Valley Bank failed? And what? First Republic went down. Silicon Valley Bank went down. Credit Suisse goes down. Well, they were worried about contagion. And so what did the Fed do? They started a program. They called it, They called it the Bank Term Funding Program. It's an odd name. How did it work? Let's pretend that you're head of a regional bank and suddenly you need cash. All these banks are going down. You need money quick. Well, what could you do? You have bonds in your portfolio. Now let's pretend that you had bonds at your bank that you loaded up on 5 years ago, 7 years ago at 2% interest because rates were low back then. Well, what the Fed said was, look, we know rates now are 5% and your 2%ers aren't worth very much anymore. But tell you what, you send those 2%ers up to us, we'll pretend they're still worth what you bought them for, even though we know they're worth maybe, 60, 70% of what you bought them for, maybe less. But we will then send you cash commensurate with it. So let's just pretend you sent up, quote unquote, $200 million worth of these bonds up there. They sent you $200 million cash, and it's for 1 year. And then you've got to pay it all back with interest to the Fed. All right, so this was the idea. Plus up the banks with cash, stop contagion. You should see a graph of the Bank Term Funding Program banks taking out billions and billions of dollars from the Fed and sending up their impaired collateral in exchange. Well, everyone was absolutely convinced that we were going to see the Bank Term Funding Program keep rolling. I mean, there was no way they were going to stop this program and make the banks really repay it, get that bad collateral back down at the bank. Nothing's been solved in the past year. Well, in January, the Fed announced, we're ending the program. Everybody's got to start paying back. Whoa, wait a minute. What have we seen since then? The banking stocks are all starting to do this. New York Community Bank, they're the guys who bought Signature Bank when it failed. Well, banks just stopped working with them. I think we talked about that last week. But the point of this is Fed Chair Powell knows that something's wrong in banking, and he's about to exacerbate it. He's going to say, we're going to demand that you send us all that money right back up to us, whether you have it or not. And if you don't, well, we won't be able to save all you guys. Well, okay, that's one thing working against the banks. There's one other thing, and that is the federal government is working against the banks. A 90-day treasury bill is paying 5.35% interest. 90 days, kind of like a 90-day CD, but backed by the government. Most banks can't pay that. So what's happening is people are pulling money from the banks to go to the government to fund our debt. It's an electronic run on the banks. As money leaves like crazy. Walt and I here at Zanetti Financial received millions of dollars out of the local banks coming to put it in T-bills. Well, okay, I get it. We're supposed to get the highest interest rate for but it's hurting the banks. So you put this together, this electronic run on the banks because of the high interest rates the government did so quickly. Add to that the emergency measure that they put together to help the banks. They're not just going to chop it off at the knees. You think, we're going to have banking issues coming up. And Jerome Powell went on 60 Minutes to kind of cover himself with all this. So what does it mean to you? I would be very cautious about having more than $250,000 at a bank right now. We're probably going to see a lot of stress in the system. It doesn't mean the whole thing is falling apart, but don't be overextended at a bank right now. Can you put money in the treasuries right now? Yes. Are there issues with the dollar that are coming? Yes, we believe that, but not yet. So what should you do? Well, right now, you've kind of seen what we're doing. All the things we've talked about, the hard assets, oil, gas, actually it's held up pretty well. And actually it's been very stable in very volatile markets. Hang with the strategy because what's the word I want to use? Chaos is too strong a word. As disruptions occur, you'll see people drifting back to assets you can trust. You can stay on the land, you can't print gold, you got to eat. That'll be the mentality. And it should be very good for all of the investors with Zanetti Financial. Thanks.